Hey everyone, it's Jack here from 13th Squadron. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to build the 13th Squadron power pod. It's going to be a long-lasting power pod that's all laser-cut wood, and it's going to give you no barbecue skewers sticking through your plane, along with just a very long-lasting power pod that'll have a lot more space for battery uses on the inside, and just be an overall great power pod that'll snap into place and snap in and out. So now, to build this, you're going to need to head over to 13thsquadron.com where you can pick it up, along with the other side guides that'll go in your plane if you're designing your own plane. And with that, let's go ahead and get into some of the features of this power pod. So this power pod is obviously new, and it's something I came up with. I honestly can't tell you how I even came up with the idea, but there's a big problem. And I bring over my Texan design. You'll notice that from one side you see no barbecue skewers, just a little intake piece. But the other side has some barbecue skewers sticking out. Now I use the old Flight Test power pod in this case, and there's nothing wrong with it, but there is a couple things wrong because I wanted to change that and make it all streamlined. So I kind of hated those barbecue skewers sticking out the side. So what I did is I've made this little box here to show you how it works. I take this new power pod, I simply slide it in from the front, and then I'll get a nice snap into place, and then I'll have no barbecue skewers going across, and it'll be all this open space in the middle, and it is not going to move. Obviously, same thing, you just pinch it here in the back, pull it out for the front, and that's your swappable power pod from 13th Squadron. So some of the key features with this power pod is obviously reversible. What I mean by that is it can be put in this way, or it can be put in that way, and it's going to be the same exact style. Now that's going to allow you to have the ESC on the bottom of some planes or on the top of some planes, just depending on the design that you decide to build. Obviously it's going to be a little bit more long-lasting, being wood. It's going to have no foam in it, so it's going to be very tough and long-lasting. Along with that, there's going to be a lot more space in the middle. For if I slide it back in again, you can see that there's going to be there's going to be a lot more space for battery and all your electronics on the inside. So. Now, obviously, you're going to have no barbecue skewers sticking out of your plane. Everything is going to be concealed, and it's going to look like a scaled plane, even though it's foam board. So, with that, though, let's go ahead and get started on our build and building your 13th Squadron power pod. Okay, so here's going to be everything that you need to build your 13th Squadron power pod, and it's going to be everything for the wood is going to be right here. It's going to be the firewall along with the actual kind of template of the 1/16 wood. You're going to need some sandpaper, in this case 220 grit. Some needle nose pliers are helpful but not needed, along with some blue tape or tape, a ruler, and some, in this case, medium CA or super glue. And obviously you're going to need your motor of choice. You don't need the ESC or anything with it, you just need the motor itself. But you can have anything else with it if you want. But with that, let's get started. Okay, so the first step we're going to do, if you're following your power pod guide, is going to be to glue these little triangle pieces to the firewall. And to do that, we're going to pop out the pieces here that I'll show you in one sec. No really correct way or wrong way to do this, just to crack them out. And if you're following along, it's going to look like that. So these 4 pieces, set that to the side. Snap off any excess wood chips. Now these are all symmetrical, so it doesn't really matter which way or which ones go where. But I'm going to choose a front that I want to glue my motor, or not glue, screw in my motor to. I'm going to say this side is the front, so I'm going to actually screw in from this angle. So I'm going to flip it over, bring it down to the table, and these pieces are going to go like such in each of these corners here. See how they fit? Should be a very snug fit. Now I have them all laid out. We're going to go ahead and put some glue underneath these and all along these edges, and then slot them into place. Now if you want, you could take some tape, just so you don't glue these down to the table, or get your table with some glue on it. Use a bigger piece of tape if you want as well. I'm going to take my super glue. And now the key with this is, if you see any like little tabs, as we call them, you go ahead and knock those off, either like right in that little corner with some pliers or with a knife. And then we're going to glue these down. You're going to make sure that they're going to be as vertical or parallel to this surface as possible and not at an angle like that or like this. So we're just going to watch for that. Obviously, watch your fingers. If you have your pliers, you can hold them like so. I'll put some glue along that edge and that edge, just like that. Put just a little bit, not too much, where it's going to go, along with the sides here, just a little bit. Place it down. Just look from above. Make sure that it's as straight as it can be. And we'll go ahead and do that for all the other ones. Once these are all in there, we're going to go ahead and take our super glue again. Just kind of almost weld them to the piece we just glued, just to give them a little bit extra strength. And I'll glue this one here and show you. Just a very, very light bead of glue right where the two pieces meet. We're going to do this on each side of each piece, just to give it the ultimate strength. Okay, so now for step 2, we're going to go ahead and let that dry. We're going to grab some more tape, or if you don't like your cutting board, just do it on the cutting board. And we're going to make these side pieces. We have 2 longer strips here, one for each side. Bring back over our kit, and we'll take out the big pieces, along with the rest of the pieces that are going to be on here. Okay, so for each side, we're going to have one of these longer pieces, and then one of these little tinier pieces, along with the main pieces with the logos on them. Now before we do this, we're going to do a very crucial step, which I guess I say crucial, but it's not needed, but it's just going to make it a lot easier day to day with using the 13th Squadron Power Pod. And that's simply just going to be taking some sandpaper, in this case 220, and we're just going to sand down these edges here. And I'll do this one and show you which sides to do. Okay, so now I'm done sanding it. All I simply did was just sand this corner and this corner on the sides on the side that does not have the tabs or the little cutout. This is going to be glued like so in this piece, and this is going to slide in and out of our plane. So we're going to do that on that piece, and then for this tinier piece, we're just going to sand down this side here, along with the other side on the same piece. I'll show you what that looks like here in just a second. Flip it around. So you're going to want to make it look just like that. Now, obviously dry fitting this, these two pieces are going to tab together like this. Should be a nice snug fit. Then what we're ultimately going to do is we're going to put this down first with glue. And then once this is done, to be a very snug fit, to be precise, this is going to tab in right on top of it like that. Now before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and sand the other side, so make sure to do that as well, and then we can get to gluing. With both sides sanded, we can go ahead and bring back our super glue. We're going to glue that middle piece, these two middle pieces first. Either do it at the same time or one by one, doesn't matter. I'm going to put glue. Again, you can use your pliers if you don't want to get your hands with super glue on them. I'm going to put glue only on these little side parts here. And then on the face here, just a little bit. Oh. Just to get a nice grip. Go ahead and place it down. Yep. Now the key with this is to make sure that it's not slanted or anything. So you're gonna once again look right above and make it as vertical as possible. And while that's still drying, I'm going to go ahead and take this longer piece here. Again, use my pliers just to help my hands out. And I'll put glue along this longer section here. Along with a little bit in that gap, if you can, but if not, that's no big deal. And along the sides of these sections here. Place that down. Should be a nice and snug fit. Go ahead and let that dry for a second. We're going to do the same thing with these pieces. We're going to take some glue and then kind of weld it again. But while that's drying, we'll go ahead and do the same thing for the other side. Now we have both sides glued, I'm going to go ahead and do the welding thing. And take the side that was drying first. And just do a little bit, mainly at this T-section, or where the intersection meets. Honestly, I'm just going to put a drop in that corner, drop in the other corner, so on and so forth. And just kind of lightly, but not that heavy at all, just take the nozzle. I'm honestly not even putting any glue out, I'm just kind of smearing it around in there to connect these together. Something just like that. But definitely don't want to do anything less than this is going to be just fine. Don't want to be more than this. I'll do the same thing again. Okay, so after letting both of these dry, I'm going to go ahead and connect all the connections together. And the way we're going to do that, I'm going to take the one that's been drying the longest, keep it on this tape just to not get any glue on the table. And this is just going to simply kind of press on the side of this here in all together. It'll be something just like that, but obviously we're going to put some glue in there to make it right. Now, when we glue these together, I'll just dry fit it here. Should be a pretty tight fit, just that way it's nice and snug. You're going to notice that if I do this by dry fit, just as a hard example, this side is going to be way out this way when this one's relatively straight and perpendicular. We're going to make sure that when we do this, we're going to favor gluing these slightly angled outward. So you can have a triangle ready if you want. But what you don't want to see is... And you can see on this one here that I already made, it kind of bows together, and all you're doing, if it bows together like that, is just decreasing the amount of strength it has. What I mean by that is you want these to kind of press outward into the body of the plane, which is really going to make sure that it stays in during flight. And I've never had any problems with it yet but it's just a possibility. So what you want to see is it's going to look something like this, where it bows outward to give pressure on the outside walls to stay in place. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so I'm going to take one of these off here. I'm going to put glue on both pieces again. I'm going to put it right on that face there, and right there. I'm going to go ahead and put these together. Kind of trying to squeegee it away from the table if it's possible, but if not, no worries. Bring it down and kind of squeeze it, press it in like that. I'm just going to watch again from my perspective to make sure that it's the slightest bit angled outward. I'm going to use a table as my friend here to see if I put the firewall parallel with these lines. See, I'm actually bowing slightly inward, so check it. The best example I can give for the camera is this 45-degree angle line. So I had to give a rough estimate. It's just about that much. You can see it's slightly not with this line, but it's just slightly bowed outward by that much. So this is one of the things that'll really make the PowerPod last long term. So if you do this step, it's just really gonna take it to the next level, you could say. And while that's drying, I'm gonna do the same thing for the other side. Now with this, I'm going to make sure it's try to be parallel as the other side as I can, just to make it sure it's an even grip on both sides when it gets put in the plane. Take it down the table. So once we have our angle set, pick up this PowerPod and do the same thing with that welding technique. You just take the glue and smear it in these corners here and all along that edge. And do it just like that. Same thing for the other side. I'm going to even go ahead and put some glue just where these pieces meet up here, just to give that much more, a little bit of strength. I'm not doing anything on the outside just to not disrupt the flow of the design, but I'm just kind of gluing where I can to connect them and give them just the most strength possible. Okay, at this point, the building of your PowerPod is now done. So you put the super glue aside. The next step is going to be to actually attach the motor that you're going to be choosing to put on your PowerPod, along with, well, really that's it for your PowerPod. But what I'm going to show you is the process of how to install it on any plane. It's going to be 13th Squadron kit or just your own design, and show you the rules of how to install it. Because in this case, I'm going to be using a flight test radial, which I think is a great motor, and it's honestly one of the ones that I designed this around. But it's okay if you don't have this motor. Any motor size is just about the same size, and if not, you can ask questions. I can try to answer them to let you know if it'll work on this motor mount or not. But I kind of designed it around this motor because it's a great motor for this size. But there's a couple rules you got to follow with installing your motor, because this motor, obviously I don't know the exact dimensions, but the distance from the firewall to where the propeller sits is 40 millimeters, or at least that's the way I design it. It's very important to know that. So if your motor is going to be longer, you're going to have to account for that with your motor, or else your propeller is going to be sticking out. Or on the other end, if your motor is too short, your propeller is going to be going into the cowling of the airplane. So it's just important to know how to put your power pod into the build, whether that's a 13th Squadron kit or your own design. So with that though, let's go ahead and install our motor, and I'll show you how to glue in your side guides to your airplanes. So now that we have all the wood glued together, let's go ahead and screw on our motor of choice. Once again, in this case, I'm using a Flight Test 2218 1180 kV brushless motor. This is kind of the motor that I designed it around, but obviously, if you have a motor of similar size, it's going to work just fine. But that's what I'm using, and I'm going to go ahead and screw it on. So once we have all our screws screwed onto our motor, this is going to be the end of the motor mount, or the power pod. It's technically finished, but there's a few things we can do to make it even better. And that's simply just going to be to sand down this back edge, along with sanding down just all of the surfaces. But the main one I'll show you here is I have some 100 grit sandpaper. I'm just going to take it along this outer edge, just kind of go, just sand this down. Because when we squeeze these together to put them into the plane, or when we slide it in from the front, it's just going to make the alignment a lot better. Now I'm sanding it at a pretty extreme angle, or favoring this side rather than like this. I'm just really trying to make it almost, not really necessarily a point, but just really favor a curve like that. So really it should work whether you sand it or not. It's just going to make it a lot easier down the road and just smoother altogether if you sand it down like this. But it just needs to be like that, or more or a little less, that's okay. And then obviously do the same thing for the other side, which I'm going to do here. But if you do that and you just kind of sand all these rough edges around the outside, shouldn't affect how it goes in or how it's aligned. But that's going to make your power pod just really nice to look at, and also nice fitting in your airplane. It'll just make everything a lot smoother. So we'll go ahead and sand the other side, and then we'll try installing it in the plane. Okay, so now that your power pod is all done, I'm going to go ahead and show you how I put it in the airplane. There'll be two different ways, and I have one way here to show you on the BF-109, which will be the first kit I release. And there's going to be two ways to do this, and either slide it in through the front cowling, and it'll latch into place with the side guides, or you could simply open the hatch, which I'll always account for this if there's a top hatch, or if the cowling is too small to slide in from the front, like so. I can't do that. You simply just, in this case, slide it in through the top. It'll pop out, and it'll snap into place. It should not move. As you can see there, all the battery space for everything, and no barbecue skewers going across. In this case, I'll also put it back in. Just kind of roughly close everything back up. And now our motor is installed in our airplane. So that's obviously one way to do it. We'll go ahead and take it back out again. Move all these wires to the side. And obviously to take it out, I'm just going to simply pinch these two side walls, just enough to get those T-slots out. Tap it up a little bit, and pull it back up and out. So that is going to be it. Okay, so at this point, your power pod is all done, and you could, in theory, go fly it. But this section is going to be very important for if you want to design your own planes, or if you have a different motor and you want to put it in a 13th Squadron kit. And it's simply just the process of how to install these side guides into your airplane using the fuselage box. Now these two foamboard pieces are just pieces I made up simply for this video, and it's just a basic display of how we're going to install the side guides and what the fuselage box looks like in about most of the planes I design. We're going to obviously need our side guides, our power pod, the box that we work with. It could be any kit, or if your own design, it'd be that for that reason. I have the former just for to show you one thing I could do with it, which I'll show you later down the road. Our propeller, or your propeller of choice, some sandpaper and epoxy to put the side guides on. And also we're going to need a ruler to measure out 40 millimeters displayed here on the box, on the fuselage box. So let's get started. So for the first part, we're going to focus on the side guides and installing them on. We can first go ahead and take our side guides and snap them out. Now once again, you could just glue these in as is, but I'm going to take some sandpaper on the side that is going to be facing up. In this case, if we put it in the plane like that, I'm going to go ahead and sand this side and just take some sandpaper, in this case also 220. Just give a little bit more of a smoother transition into that intersection. You only have to do this on one side. Do it for there and also over here. So I basically just sanded all the sides facing up on this little intersection here of this side guide. You can also just clean up these little tabs if you want. And go ahead and do the same exact thing for the other side. With these both now sanded, we can put them aside for a sec and focus on our power pod. Obviously, I'm using the Flight Test Radial 2218 1180 kV brushless motor, but obviously if you're not using that, this is where it becomes important, because if you are using this exact motor, you can simply just go ahead and glue these on and then not have to worry about it. But if you can see here on this piece / any box that I'll make for any design I'll have, as long as it's a single engine plane or uses this motor, it's going to have a 40 millimeter reference mark here, and that's going to mean that from this top of the piece, or if I glue this on, it's just simply going to be this side right here that my X-Acto blade is touching. 40 millimeters in this direction is going to be where the propeller should sit, or the back of the spinner should be of your plane. So to make sure that your motor will fit and be sized correctly for this, you're simply just going to take one of these side guides, you put it on your motor mount, and you're going to have a ruler ready. In this case, I'm going to make sure that it's 40 millimeters is hanging off. Just make it roughly parallel here. And let's see how this fits. Actually, one thing we got to do first, my bad. We have to open these up and notch out these little intersections. This is no matter what motor size you have. So now we have the intersection all taken out. Bring it back down and measure the 40 millimeters using this as a straight edge to make sure it's not slanted like this or that. It doesn't have to be exactly on it, but it just helps. And then we'll put the side guide back on one of the motor sides here, or power pod sides. And I'll hold it together as I bring it down. I'm going to press it into place. There's a motor wire underneath the way. As you can see here, it kind of finds its place. And now obviously, if I can do this best for the camera, this side guide is pretty much staying exactly roughly where it needs to go, because this motor size is going to fit for that. However, I go back down to the table, measure out the 40 millimeters. And let's see that. Try and do this where you can see it. If I use the table's lines to help me and make sure this is all straight, I'm going to see that with 40 millimeters measured, the propeller is going to sit right in line with that 40 millimeter mark in this plane of space, not airplane plane. Now, what I'm going to do is, just for your own visual, is simply just take a piece of tape and wrap it around this motor as if it were shorter, to show you how you'd account for that. This isn't going to be perfect, but just roughly. You see I have some tape around here. You can imagine that if this blue tape, right where it touches the blue tape, is where the propeller is going to sit. If this motor were that size, I'm going to do the same process with putting on the side guide to my motor mount. Putting it where it should go first. Making sure that 40 millimeters is off of that reference line from the front here. And I can see obviously it's about, in this case, 10 millimeters off. So you could just measure 10 millimeters for these, how to glue these side guides on. But you can also try to rock this a little forward, leaving your ruler in place, and looking directly from above to see that at this place roughly here is where it should sit. So I'm going to hold it with some pressure. In this case, grab a pencil or a writing utensil. I'm just going to mark, make sure it's a little bit more consistent than that, so double check again. 40 millimeters out, that looks about good. Just going to mark right about there and see that this should be glued roughly in this position. Now it also means that you're going to have to move these little intersections because it's going to reference, or it's going to go about right here. Take my my pencil. I'm going to see that that's where I'm going to have to actually take the notch out. So I would then take my knife, and this doesn't have to be perfect. Just cut a little slot. Go ahead and take these out. And luckily, this longer gap doesn't need to change because there's enough play with this power pod that you actually have space to account for that. And if your motor is off by so much where you do need to change this line, odds are your motor is either too large for this plane or too small for this plane, depending on your case. So just keep that in mind. And go back and see once again if I can tab them into the right spot. Go back down 40 millimeters. That looks pretty good. So now what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to measure exactly how far from this front edge. Let's see, that goes to there. It's about 72 and a half millimeters from this front reference line. So I would mark that at all four of these. Now I'd simply take this, line up this little point here on the corner. Now I'd make sure that it's straight with this line here. I don't want to see it like that or like that. I simply put it here and I would glue this down as is. And I would do the same thing over here. I would mirror this exactly. I wouldn't even do the same process where I would see how far it is. I would just take that 72.5 millimeter measurement and I would go over here. That way it's very symmetrical and not going to be a problem. That if you have a different motor size. I obviously don't have that. I have the Flight Test 2218 brushless or 1180 kV brushless motor. So I'm going to show you how I would do this for the recommended motor for my planes. It's simply just going to be to put this side guide in exactly where this reference mark is. And to do that, we're going to do some epoxy and epoxy it in place. Okay, so I've gone ahead and mixed some epoxy together. You just need about that much. The way we're going to put this on here is we're simply going to go basically around the edges. What I mean by that is I'm going to take some epoxy here with a toothpick. I'm just going to smear around the outside and away from that intersection or the cross. And I'll do this and I'll show you what it should look like when it's done. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done this one side. It should look something about like this. Very light layer. Go ahead and take one of these side guides. Make sure the side that you sanded is up like this. And then I'm following the lines that I have in the exact shape of this side guide because I'm using the recommended motor of the Flight Test 2218 1180 kV brushless motor. Obviously make sure that you glued in the right spot with your marks before if you were doing it with a different motor. But I'm going to put this down. Give it a little bit of a swirl to kind of smear or get spread the glue around. I'll wipe my toothpick clean. Just kind of take away any smearing on the edges. And make sure it's just aligned perfectly and very parallel to the line and just perfectly in place for these reference marks. And once you get in a good spot, go ahead and glue the other side. So once you have both of these in place, I'm just going to take some of that extra epoxy that's still wet. I'm just going to put the tiniest amount just on the edges here to smear it into that and just make it even stronger of a bond. Now obviously this is a very crucial step, and that's why we're using epoxy to make sure it's perfectly straight. Once you've gone ahead and spread it in on the sides, once again, just make sure that it's perfectly aligned with your reference marks, because now you have the time to do so. Now once it's all set in place, we're going to go ahead and let this dry until your epoxy, whether that's 5-minute epoxy, overnight epoxy, we're just going to go ahead and let it dry. Now that we've let our epoxy dry, you can go ahead and build the plane or the box however the plane is supposed to be built, whether that's a 13th Squadron kit that you've been following the build video on, or your own design that you want to design yourself. That's the next step. Just go ahead and build it. Alright, now with your fuselage box done, it's going to look a little more functional for your power pod. So we bring this over. You're going to see that there's going to be two ways for this to go in. Obviously, motor wires are going to be a hassle no matter what. But one way is going to be to slide it in through the front, like such. And then it's going to simply snap into place like that. And that's going to lock in there. It's not going to come out at all. Obviously, with this, you'd have your battery and your ESC somewhere in here, or another way that the plane was designed for it. Like maybe the ESC goes down below underneath all this. Just depends, but it has the design freedom for you to do that. So obviously you want to take it back out, all you got to do is squeeze these sides, and then give it a little nudge forward, and pull it out the front. Now obviously the BF-109 does not do that way, or not do it that way. It slides it in where if you open up the hatch on the top of the engine, you'd simply slide it in like such. Move your wires out of the way, bring it down a little bit, and then snap it into place. That's the same thing. Pinch the sides again, and pull it right on out. So, with that, you're going to have a very long-lasting power pod that is going to not only be very functional for your plane, but it's going to be super scale, where there's no barbecue skewers sticking out the side, and it's just going to be a great power pod all around. So, with that, I'll say either thank you for not only watching, but also thank you for purchasing the power pod and also the side guides, or just purchasing the side guides for your own design and designing your own plane. So with that, thanks for flying by, and I hope you have a good one.